know who's there. I mean, this is not like I've seen Zoom. All I see is you. Is that the way it's going to work?
You should see a little option to near the top right-hand corner to see more participants.
No, all it says is record.
Or at the bottom, I can see the button participants, and if I click on that,
I don't, oh, now I see something.
It's a
There it
very distinguished group, Ron.
is. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we can just start. Hello, everyone that's listening. I saw a little note that George Binney put out that sort of gave a brief outline of me. So let me begin by saying that I did grow up in Lovington, New Mexico, although I was born in Oklahoma. And I started caving really in 1959 when I started diving in the sinkholes, the gypsum sinkholes over by Roswell called the Bottomless Lakes. And the first book I read about diving was in Cousteau's book. There was a story about a cave there where they were inhaling carbon monoxide and damn near all died. So I'd been fascinated with caves since about 1959. When I started diving, I was 14 years old. And I had a magazine, a diving book, that said that Carlsbad Cavern's wet caves had been swam upon by many divers. So I got the idea that the Park Service people were hiding the way to some deep lakes or water-filled caves, which of course I began to find out, even though I got off the trail one time and climbed up on the gypsum blocks looking for it while on a tour. And I barely escaped without getting thrown out of the cave. And in the meantime, I did begin caving in the gypsum caves near Artesia, and eventually started caving like Cottonwood and some others that you probably all know. And that led to meeting Charlie Peterson, who was the first cave specialist at Carlsbad Cavern. Charlie was a fire aide when I first met him. And he was the first cave specialist thanks to a resource manager there by the name of Phil Van Cleve, who was very forward-looking about the idea that caves needed to be managed, looked at, and understood better. And I went on several trips with him, ended up with Charlie, and ended up joining up as a joint venture with the Cave Research Foundation. And I was touring the cave one day with my family, and there was a ranger there named Cliff Stroud, who sort of offhandedly said to me that I should apply for Charlie's position after he left and went to Buffalo River. Well, I had no idea what that meant. I don't know. I was an oil field worker, dug ditches and screwed pipe. So I stopped into the headquarters office in town, and they gave me an application, which I filled out in pencil because I've never been too bright, so I just did whatever I thought I should do. And the first go around, nobody was hired. They said that there were no people that applied that were competent to do the job. And a resource manager there at the cave, Bruce Fladmark, said that he knew that cavers had applied for the position. So then all of us had to reapply. I think there were about 10 people. And somehow I got the job. It certainly wasn't because of my background, because I had no formal education. I left high school in 1962. I was just a caver like everybody else. And it's always been kind of weird when people would ask me for advice on how to get into the National Park Service. I don't know. Just apply for something, and there it goes. So anyway, I was fortunate to get in there right at the time of the discovery of the bones in Muskox Cave, and also the climbing of the wall above the bottomless pit. So there was a lot of stuff going on. That was in 1976, the bicentennial year. And of course, there was a lot of hype about that, renaming a big column in Ogle Cave the bicentennial column, as if it just popped up over that period of time. And of course, it had always been in there. So anyway, that's kind of a brief background. In the meantime, I was married and had 3 children. I saw somebody today who said that they were 7 years old when the first moonwalk occurred, and that made me feel really old because we had all of our children when the first moonwalk happened. So I'm not a spring chicken, and I love it when people say, oh, you're new, and I haven't been new in about, probably 75 and a half years. Well, I'll stop there and we'll get into any questions. I've seen some things written about me, which absolutely are not the way things really happen. So anyway, anybody have any questions? Am I going to read them? Am I going to hear you or what?
They should be able to just unmute their mics and speak up, and you should be able to hear them.
I have a question, Ron. This is Larry Pardue.
Yeah,
You
I see
spoke
you,
about renaming, and I would like to hear your opinion on renaming of New Cave to Slaughter Canyon Cave.
I was very opposed to that. In fact, so opposed that when the paperwork came into the regional office there in Santa Fe, where I was at the time, I hid it, put it away in my desk, and said, "Oh well, you know what? I don't know if I got time to get to this." Until finally, it came down from the director of the National Park Service to tell that guy to sign off on that. And by God, we want it done. And to me, that's like, you know, I don't care what you call it, except that it was traditionally that, and I'm big on tradition. So I did not like it. And it made me wonder if Wind Cave, which is new spelled backward, if we would have to rename it Slaughter Canyon Cave spelled backward. So I was not, but then that's I just like that. I just don't like it. I still don't like it. It's kind of like everybody getting tight. And I have one of Kaminsky's t-shirts that he did, where on the front it says, "It may be cave to you," and on the back it said, "But it will always be caca to me."
That's good.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, can I ask you to explain how you and Michael Queen used all those balloons and wanted to try and hook a different formation above top of the cross, and how that turned out?
Sure, I can address that. And you know that we did one before that, right? Out in the main corridor, which was because of Jim Hardy and I walking through the cave. And he pointed up there to what was then called by the interpretive staff the Three Monkeys. And he opinioned that perhaps that's the rest of Carlsbad Cavern up there going along that joint. So I would sit down there on the bench after hours, during hours, I didn't care, and stare up at that thing. And you know, it's pretty much right smack in the middle of the main corridor. So how to get up there? How to get up there without bashing anything, without using bolts, or I'm not a real pro bolt kind of person. And I came up with the idea, because I'm simple-minded, that if we put balloons so in the middle and lift it up, you'd have to lift it up really high to get past that peak. So in talking to J. Michael, we came up with the idea of building a sort of a plywood, a balsa wood spreader bar. And of course, once we started doing that, the high humidity in the cave just made that spreader bar wiggle around all over the place, and we couldn't get it hooked. So then we decided, well, look, all we need to do is put balloons over here on the line, put balloons over here, and then that will be, we don't need any wood. And sure enough, we managed to hook it. And we tied off a rope. And when we discovered the storm cloud chamber, I had climbed first. So Michael climbed up there first in the main corridor. And as soon as he got up there and got seated, I went up. I didn't like it at all. I thought, oh man, if that damn thing breaks off, we're both going to die. And I reached up when I got to him to this little stalagmite, and it was hollow. I told Michael, I said, that thing's hollow. He said, yeah, I know. I just wanted you to have the same experience I did. I said, thanks a lot. So anyway, we got up there and we both wanted down from there at that time. And I said, you know what, Michael, I'm going to go down now. We need to think about this. And Michael said, the only reason I'm not already down is because you're in my way. So I took off and got down. And then later, Matt Sanford and I went back up, I think the next night. And it was only 26 feet. We surveyed 26 feet back behind the three monkeys. And that was it. That's all there was. But we still thought it was worthwhile. At least now we know that that's not where the rest of the main corridor is. It's going down. And especially now that we know that Carlsbad was a hypogenic cave rather than epigenic, that most likely we were spinning our wheels anyway to begin with. And at one point, when Don Doucette was climbing on the opposite side of the main corridor, I was with my son at night just watching them. And we climbed up on that opposite wall, what would be on your left going down the main corridor. And that's the first really good look that I got of that area that we went to. And it looks like it's in the Yates and it's fractured. And had I seen it from that angle, I would have never freaking climbed up there because I would have been frightened out of my wits. I'm not sure this is answering your question, Deb, but when it came to the one in the main, in the big room, the spirit world, where you've been up there, Donald's been up there. And it was just a simple matter of this time of making like an embroidery hook sort of a thing. And thanks to Tom Bemis's quick thinking, we used not only helium balloons, but we also filled, he got us two clothing bags for like a dry cleaner. And we tied them off at the top, each one, and then put one of those on each side on what we then had as the back of the apparatus, and got it up there and managed to snag that stalagmite up there. And then we just jerked on it real hard, and the balsa wood tore apart. We later picked up the pieces, and then we pulled up a rope. Everybody knows where that was, tied it off, and up we went. And how it ended up on television on NBC, I think, is at that time, the lady who had the Pine Cafe, Pine Junction, whatever it was, down at Guadalupe Mountains. The deal was she was supposed to have already turned that over to the Park Service on a pre-authorized agreement. Well, I don't know, her kid, somebody, and it was a typical sort of, big, bad, nasty Park Service and poor little rancher person or poor little restaurant owner person. And a bunch of the people that NBC filmed down there were Park Service employees that were off duty, and they hardly ever went in there. So anyway, once NBC realized that they had been duped, they called the superintendent, Rick Smith, and asked if there's anything they could do to make up for that. And we were involved in the spirit world at that time. And he said, sure, these guys are doing this, so come down and give us some good publicity. So anyway, that's it. Michael and I and Jim, we were all friends, and nobody was excluded, but there weren't people standing in line to go up there with us at first. So that's
Since
kind
you
of
just mentioned Michael, do you have any thoughts about him?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts about Michael. I first met Michael. I think everybody lost. All I see is like a little fake person sitting there in the middle of my screen. Can everybody still hear and see me?
It's still going perfectly on my end.
Okay.
I
All
can
right,
hear
now
you.
back. Okay. Well, some people have heard me tell this tale before, but I got involved with the Cave Research Foundation before I ever went to work for the Park Service. And Michael was already coming there. And to the best of my memory, it was either 72 or 73. And I heard him. He told me in years after that when he was in Las Vegas one time and called the desk, and they thought that he was who's that guy that does Cosmos TV show, that scientist?
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan. That the young lady at the desk was convinced that he was Carl Sagan, checked in under a fake name because of his voice. And Michael assured her that he was not Carl Sagan. But anyway, we're sitting at what we then called the Cave Research Foundation buildings. And Michael and another caver were talking. And they were talking about the red stuff and the black stuff and the white stuff in Spider Cave. And the guy asked Michael, did he know what the red stuff was? And Michael replied, no, I don't know. And the guy said, do you know what the black stuff is? And Michael said, no, I do not know what it is, but that does not make it any less interesting. And I thought, what a thing to say. And that started our friendship. And which to me, the whole process of me being in the Park Service was pretty weird, because I worked with a lot of scientists from pretty much all over the world, and I never got out of my mind that I was a high school dropout, so I had to fake everything, and that's what I've been doing now for all these years. I really don't know anything. I just pretend to, and people fall for it. So anyway, does that answer your question? I mean, he came there a lot by himself when there were no other things going on. And he came with me a lot in the cave because of our rule that there had to be 3 people before you could enter any cave. And as soon as I got there, I changed that to 2 people, because Charlie once said that his most difficult thing was getting people to go with him, especially people that worked at the cave. I was under the erroneous assumption that if you worked at Carlsbad Caverns, you had to love caves. Well, it turned out that's not true. That's not saying anything bad, but it is a job, and people in the Park Service like to go around and do different things, and they can be excited about a resource, but not want to get real deeply involved, like let's say Dave does. Okay, any other questions?
Ron, this is Diana. Can you relive that weekend when Lechugee was broken into and some of the subsequent excitement over the cave? And what was your reaction to this, and what ended up opening up?
Well, when I first heard about it, I was very excited. I made the mistake of saying it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And Rick Smith, the superintendent, he said, well, as soon as I get home, I'm going to go tell Diana that, because she was the best thing that ever happened. And I said, well, let me rephrase that. So I was very, very excited. And as you probably know, I was never a person who wanted to keep people out of caves. In fact, that was one of the things that I tackled right away. There were some old timers there that started telling me when we started opening caves for people to go into with permit that, well, in 1950, well, this is not 1950 anymore. So anyway, I was very excited. I didn't realize what was going to go on. And once we talked about it in a couple of staff meetings, and I think people by that time had been down Boulder Falls. I'm not sure that they had been to the Chandelier Ballroom. I'm unsure about that timeline. But Bobby Chrisman was acting superintendent at that time. He was acting superintendent so many times they should have just made him superintendent and let everybody else go away. Well, he was at a Kiwanis Club meeting and he mentioned the cave and extolled its virtues. And I had cautioned that we should not really talk too much about it until we really know what's going on out there. Well, as they say, when he talked about it at the Kiwanis meeting, the cat was out of the bag. And that's when the people started, local people and some people for the West and that kind of stuff, got the notion that the Park Service was trying to hide something from them. And no matter how much we talked that was not the case, we were just waiting to make sure. I mean, what if it had only gone down Boulder Falls and not gone any further, which happens a lot of times. But that didn't make us look any better. We were the bad guys, and especially when I championed the idea of having the cave as the wilderness. And as you know, anytime you talk wilderness, that means that you're going to take everything away from people who don't go there anyway. So I came under a lot of pressure, especially political pressure. And when I say political, I'm talking about from senators and from state senators. One, of course, who knew me on site, Diana and I were having breakfast one morning in the Stevens Cafe, and he saw us come in, and he raised his voice talking about that stupid cave specialist who wants to make everything out there wilderness. And we just ate our breakfast. And then later, the same guy, we went to the motion pictures a few weeks after that, and he saw me there, and he spoke very loudly about me there too. So that didn't do my any good about conserving the cave, protecting it. And then when the guy threatened to shoot me in a camera store there, that kind of Michael got me out of there. He was with me, and Michael grabbed me, and we walked out there. He sort of shoved me out of there. So there were a lot of things going on, how to handle all the people coming, which I'm sure I didn't do as good a job as Dale did later on. And the whole idea of wilderness and, and then at that wilderness meeting, when I got onto that little thing that I told Jim that if I don't get up there and say my piece, we had 3 minutes, that I'm afraid I won't stick to my script. And a minister had talked about it laying fallow and about the talents the guy had, and he didn't spend them, he wasted them. And he's the first guy that I said something to. I said, minister, if I was one of the meek that was going to inherit the earth, I'd be really pissed off at what you did to my part of it. Well, that didn't help. And then the lady got up, and said, rancher lady, and said that there were more people like me, there wouldn't be any sheep to eat. And I said, the only reason you're worried about mountain lions eating sheep is because they don't have pockets to carry wallets and pay for the damn sheep they eat. So for years, I wouldn't eat any kind of lamb meat, any kind of sheep meat. Let the damn mountain lions have it for all I cared. And all throughout all of this, Diane, as you've known me for years, I tried not to go over the top and try not to be passionate about things. But I'm now 76 and I don't have that under control yet. But I plan on it here in the next few days.
Actually, I hope you never get that under control. That's what makes you wonderful.
So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it was, I loved it. I loved the idea. We had the right superintendent there at the time. And I was really happy. Oh, hello. Really happy about that. And things went along. He was very supportive of wilderness. He was supportive of people going into the cave and surveying it and doing studies in it. And the only thing is the NSS convention was in Tularosa. We had the cave rescue thing at the cave. And we had it, the people gathered in what we call the chapel then, which is a big open room in the original administration building. And I asked Rick to please come down and welcome everybody to the park and tell them how much we appreciate them being there. And he said, okay, so he came down and he said, oh yeah, we're glad you're here. And, you know, all this kind of stuff. He was real nice and polite. And he said, but you know, guys, and now remember, he worked in Yosemite for many years with the big wall climbers. And he said, all I saw get publicity on TV was some guy climbing a rope real fast. He said, hell, we can train monkeys to do that. And so what's the big deal? Well, that went over like a lead balloon because the guy who was the fastest, he was in the group that time. And after that was all over, I went upstairs to see him in his office. And he said, I really screwed up, didn't I? Only he didn't say screwed. And I said, well, Rick, it wasn't the best thing you could have said. And he said, well, can you get me out of it? I said, I'll do my best. So I went down and finally told the guy, I said, you know, he's just an idiot. Don't pay any attention to him. But he was really a great guy, a great superintendent. I really liked him a lot and still do. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Ron, can you recount the story of rafting down Walnut Canyon?
Well, it doesn't have much to do with caves, but yeah. Well, actually, I guess it does.
Carlsbad. Well, you were working at Carlsbad. You were, I was thinking, you know, with Bemis.
That's right. Yeah. Bemis is the one who suggested that whole little episode. And I told him that if he ever wanted to do that, to come and get me, and I'd do it with him. And he showed up at my house about 7 o'clock in the morning, banging on the front door. And I opened the door and he was just vibrating with energy and saying, the canyon's flooded, let's go. And on top of his car, he had that rubber raft. And so I told him just a minute, and he's made an extreme amount of fun of me for putting on pantyhose. But when I was a commercial diver, that's how we wore our wetsuits, because back in those years, wetsuits did not have any nylon lining in them. They were just all rubber, and it was easy to rip a hole in them. So if you wore pantyhose, then you could they would slide on pretty easily. And of course, Bemis, when he wrote it up, he said, well, that was my story, as if I was some kind of idiot wearing pantyhose, but it worked really well. And we went down there, and it wasn't the smartest thing that we ever did, either one of us, but just to see, I always have a habit of doing this, to see what would happen if I got kicked out of the boat. I just jumped in and let it carry me down a little ways. And if Bemis did the same thing, and I had to help get him out of the water because, you know, he doesn't bend very easily and he's pretty stiff. In fact, I still have a Bemis bending kit because I was always threatening to bend him if he screwed with me. And anyway, we got in it and away we went. And it worked pretty well. We were pretty excited. We were already talking about starting a commercial rafting trips down Walnut Canyon. And then the area manager back then, Jack Linehan, he was not happy with us doing that. He wanted to know where our permit was. And I told him we'd lost it in the canyon. So Anyway, that's it. And we never got a chance to do it again because that was unusually high water at that time.
Hey,
Yeah,
Ron,
but-
this is Borax. Today I was reading a book about the history of diving in the National Park Service. And so I turned to the page on Carlsbad Caverns. And of course, your name was throughout the whole page, all the dives you had done. Can you tell us about some dives you did in Carlsbad?
Sure, I can talk about that. Oh man, I lost it. Real quick, Rodney, let me just mention this. I caught a lot of heck from employees when they built the fence in front of the cave entrance. And some of them went down there deliberately to climb over it and take pictures of them doing it and talking about how disgraceful that was. And I was a party to it and it was my idea. And then I should be horsewhipped for it. But in the 80s, two guys attempted to enter the cave. And one of them was actually a relative of a high school friend of mine, only he was from Hobbs, New Mexico. And he's the one that went right off the nose going down in front of the entrance down there low. And he's now a paraplegic. And there's old rebar sticking up down there. And he's lucky he didn't fall on that because he would have been speared right proper. And the other guy who slid off, when we got down there, he was just a sack of bones. He just had many compound fractures, and of course he had perished in that attempt. So that's when I came up with the idea, because I hate gates anyway, but the idea of something to give the idea to people that you ought not to come in here. And again, everybody, Bobby again was saying, well, we never had to do this before. And well, okay, but damn it, people aren't the same as they used to be. And I used to get into a lot of trouble in meetings, especially with my monkey I used to carry with me, and for staff meetings. So anyway, Rod, I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because that was pretty traumatic event for those young men to try to enter Carlsbad Cavern. And now please refresh my memory about what you asked me.
Yeah, I was just asking about some of your diving.
Diving. Yeah. Well, as I said, that was my first interest in doing something out of doors, was diving. And I found out, of course, that magazine didn't know what it was talking about the diving water-filled passages in Carlsbad. But I was always looking for some way to get to dive in a cave. And I had been diving in Jacob's Well down in Texas. And, that's rated as being very, very dangerous. But truthfully, it's very straightforward if you stick to the main passage. And there are hardly any other passages going off from it. In fact, none, until you get down to that squeeze, and then you squeeze through that, and there's a great big room back there going up real high ceiling. And so I had done that, and I had just come from being a commercial diver. So the Dentons in town there in the Grotto, Perry Denton had been president of the Grotto. They knew that I was a diver, and they suggested to the Park Service that I be allowed to dive into New Mexico Run. And of course, that's more sump diving than cave diving. And I was eager to do it. And I set up a rig with a air hose, because remember, that's what I used as a commercial diver. And at that time, working in the oil field, I stole a valve, which I traded at the shop, the oil field supply store, for that hose, enough hose, almost 200 feet of hose, I think. And that's what I used in the New Mexico Run to get back there. And breathing through that. And two other people had tried to go beyond. Jim Martin, who was later chief ranger out at Hawaii Volcanoes, and Bruce Fladmark? No. Well, sorry, his name escapes me, but he didn't wear a wetsuit, and I could froze his butt off trying to get through there. And after that, there wasn't really too much more diving there. I dove in the mystery room pool because everybody had that. Well, Donald was there when I did that, and trying to see if there was a passage beyond that I could see into that caused a pumping sound. And it turned out that we did not find anything. And of course, I used diving gear to pick up coins out of Green Lake. And then I dove in Cottonwood Cave, which is where I almost gave it up because there was a column in the middle of the passage that I had to squeeze through. And I came out because I was afraid to squeeze through it. And when I come up, there were a lot of anticipation in their faces that what did I find? And I said, oh, I just come up to say, see you later. Because I thought, okay, either you do this crap or you don't. Nobody's making you do it. Don't be a chicken. And I went on and it dead ended. And the worst part of that trip is my wife, Diana, was with us. And my friend who was, I had built my own regulator hookup. And every time I would come up into an air pocket, you couldn't hear me breathing anymore. And he would tell Diana, oh, he's not breathing. He may have drowned. And he did that 5 or 6 times. And she never went with me anymore when I was diving in a cave. So anyway, is that okay? I mean, a lot of other Park Service diving, like down in Del Rio and then out at Border Cave, because we were the only people who weren't in any kind of a water park or river park that were qualified to dive with the submerged cultural resources unit, which is now just submerged resources unit. And the guys who were the head of that, Dan Linehan and others, especially Dan, he loved the acronym for Submerged Cultural Resources Unit, which was the SCREW unit. So anyway, is that okay, Rodney?
That was awesome. Thanks.
Okay, sure.
Hey, did you ever
Ron,
dive in the mystery room?
Huh?
Did you ever dive in the mystery room?
Yeah, I said that in the pumping pool.
Oh, okay. You did do that.
Yeah, I did do that and couldn't find anywhere for it to go. And that's when I met Donald Davis, was on that trip. Because after I came up, then we went on down to the low point and at the back end of the mystery room, slithered down there and got as far as we could. And that was it. We came back out.
Ron, I grew up in Carlsbad in the 60s,
Yeah.
and I was fascinated by caves. I was aware of a lot of them, and
Uh-huh.
Particularly New Cave and some others, but I knew there was no way I could ever go to them. And I came back in the 80s, and I found out that it was possible to visit some of these caves.
Yes.
I think that was due to you. So I think that's the spirit of exploration.
Right. Well, yeah, when my first inquiry to Carlsbad was asking about Cottonwood Cave, and we'd been in it to the gate. One of Diana's brother-in-laws and I used to cave quite a bit together. He had been caving down in Oklahoma, in eastern Oklahoma, and they sent me back a letter, again drafted for the superintendent, and the answer was, Cottonwood Cave is on the Forest Service, and we have no control over that. But all caves immediately to the east of Cottonwood Cave are on the park, and it's highly unlikely that you or your group would ever be qualified to go into those caves. Well, I didn't think that was a very good answer, although they did send me, and I still have it, one of those little yellow informational folders, which they said we've been closed to informational folder for a year to read. So I got with another prominent caver there that I don't think he would like everybody to know what he did, because he's more reluctant to admit to going into things. But I just started going in caves. What the hell are they going to do? They're not going to eat me. And I didn't think that I was any less qualified than the people I met in CRF. So I just started going in them. In fact, at that time, the second entrance, God, I shouldn't be saying this, to New Cave had no gate on it, nothing. And we knew where it was, thanks to this other caver. And we would go in New Cave, even before tours were allowed in it. And we used a little cable ladder, and it broke when I was on it one day. So we called it Broken Ladder Cave. And we never showed any photographs of like the Christmas tree or any of the other prominent speleothems, which anybody would recognize. And at one point, we went up to the main gate to take a rest before going up the passage and climbing out, which, by the way, that entrance is now gated. And we left, and I understood later that night that of the two brothers who went in there with me, one of them had left 2 rolls of film sitting right there on that gate. So they had to drive all the way back out there from Carlsbad at night to walk up there and get those 2 rolls of film, or they would have been found out. And anybody that knows Carlsbad caving probably knows who the 2 brothers that I'm referring to, but I'm not going to say, because they don't like to be that open about it. And I don't care. Again, what are they going to do? They can't eat me. Or, well, they could, but I don't think they would. So, yeah, and that's where I ran into a real roadblock with the old timers there, with opening up the caves. And I always thought that was kind of duplicitous, because most of them had been in Ogle, they had been in New Cave, they'd been in lots of caves. And I thought, well, what the hell? They're no better at it than cavers are. So I think we should do some permits. So yeah, I'll take the blame for opening it up to the park up to cavers, Deep Cave, and a lot of those other caves. I didn't see any reason not to. Although
I appreciate it very, very much.
So yeah, I'm guilty of that. Anybody have any other questions?
Ron,
Yeah.
this is Linda Starr,
Nice to meet you, Linda.
nice to see you, and even virtually.
Yeah.
My question's about your poetry. You wrote a book called Bats and Spiders in the Night, or something like that, and a book of poetry, and it was a wonderful book. And I didn't know that you wrote poetry. And when I bought this book, I really fell in love with the poetry that was inside. Can you tell me, or tell us, how, when you started writing poetry, and if you're still writing poetry today, and what inspires you to write poetry?
Well, I started writing stuff like that when I was still in high school, and especially after Diana and I started dating. And I just did it to try to impress her, because I lied like crazy. I told her all kinds of stuff. I told her a false name. I told her I could dance. I can't even walk, much less dance. So, and I had a different name till my mother found out about it. And so Lovington was not the most hopping town in New Mexico. And I always wanted to try to make everything that we did bigger than it really was. Like I'd go in a line at the drive-in, and this lady started pushing on me to get ahead, and I turned to her and acted as if I couldn't hear. like this, and I heard her say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you're deaf." And I just kept doing this, and I went up and just pointed at stuff. The guy figuring out what kind of candy and popcorn I wanted, and then he said something to me, and I said, "Thank you." And boy, that lady blew up behind me because I was doing stuff like that all the time. So writing was something I wanted to be. And I finally think in the final analysis is bat wings and spider eyes is people call it poetry because I have no command of the English language.
Yeah.
So they didn't know what the hell else to call it. This must be poetry. And I didn't think it was until people started saying it. So unlike Bob Dylan, who says, "I'm a poet and I know it," I say, "I'm not a poet and I know it." Anyway, it's just something that I've done all my life, pretty much from my teenage years. Anyway, does that answer your question?
So, or do you still write poetry today?
Oh, well,
I know you wrote a poem about Diana. So
yeah. Well, have you seen the book that Dale Payton and I did together?
yes,
Because it has a lot of my stuff and his stuff in there. Because
yeah.
he's quite a poet too. You know, he's a songwriter as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, writing, photography, and I shouldn't even say this to all you guys, but after being with one person 54 years and 25 days and dating 2 years before we married, my enthusiasm for doing things, I can't stay focused. So the answer is no, I'm not writing anything anymore, except that once in a while, Mike Taylor tries to encourage me to do some things for that illuminations. And I'll have to just come. This is the first talk that I've turned down every request to talk until Dave asked me to do this tonight. And it's because I'm so fond of all of you down there and the park. So that's why I'm doing this. Okay, is that so? No, I'm not writing anything anymore.
We're really
But
happy you're
Facebook-
doing this.
Thank you,
Thank
Ron.
you, and I hope you write something for the Illustrations Art magazine.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to see something.
Illuminations.
My caving days are going to be all over now. I've broken shattered my left patella, and it didn't heal for several months. And now that it's healed, I still have a lot of problems walking without a cane. I've fallen so many times. It's like one of those knockover toys. I stand up and then I get knocked over my own self. And then I had some radiation treatments, and so I'm just going to have to get myself back together. I went to the store and they didn't have any newer models of me, so I gave up on that, or spare parts. Anyway, okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
You're
Anyone else have any questions?
Sure, I'll
I
ask
don't
another one. When you were in charge of parks or caves for all of the parks, I know that you came out to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, or at least I remember hearing that you had.
I had.
And I was curious what kinds of things you could say about the caves there, since we're here on the island at the moment.
Oh, wow. I wish I was there.
You'd be welcome to come join us.
A little background on that. Bill Halliday is why I ended up out there,
Somebody has a question.
because of all his shenanigans. Many of them really had not much to do with caves. Some did, some didn't. Some of them had to do with hydrothermal energy. He put a guy up to ask him any questions, and the guy said that the guy, when I answered, he was asking about stuff over in Puna. And I said, I don't know. I work for the National Park Service, and anything that I think or would do would stop at the boundary of the park. And he said, well, that's sufficiently wishy-washy. And I said, I've been accused of being a lot of things, but wishy-washy is damn sure not one of them. Which part of I work here and over there I don't work? And that went over pretty good. He shut up, which is all I wanted, for him to shut up. And it was Halliday who put him up to that. So I think that, again, you've got a place that they seem to think that there's some exclusivity to those caves because they're on the park, and that nobody except a select group that they say can go. And that's something that I've been opposed to ever since I started working for the National Park Service. And I found it very difficult to work there because of how hypersensitive the park staff is, all the park staffs, all the parks, to like the Hawaiian Burial Council. And I understand being sensitive, but you meet with one auntie in a meeting, and she says, well, just use common sense. If you see a deceased person, a skeleton, just note it and go around it. Don't disturb it. Okay, that sounds good. But then the next auntie comes the next day, and she doesn't want us to go, anybody to go in any of the caves. If they see a bones, get out of there and don't come back. And then one goofy caver or somebody talked about some caver urinating in the cave. And oh, good God. Then I thought, oh, I'd like to squeeze you till your eyes pop out, because we just sort of had things smoothed out, and then boom, he got hit again. So I think I can say, Ken, that I'm really glad that I don't have to get in that anymore. It's the same as over at Wapatki, Sunset Crater, actually, with a little lava tube there that we finally gated. But I was supposed to meet Hopi. So I fly out there, get a hotel, come to the park at the appointed time early. I went early. And we went out to the cave looking around. And then one of the rangers come out and said, well, Hopi's not coming. Maybe tomorrow. Okay. So I go back. And anyway, to make a long story short, I went out there 3 times about that cave, and Hopi never showed up every time. And finally they said, oh, well, you know what? Just let people go in there. Well, of course, they put pahos in there, and people would steal them if they saw them in there, the little prayer sticks. And so anytime you deal with sensitive things like that, it's a real tightrope that you have to walk. And of course, I made a lot of cavers angry, I know, over the years. There's no doubt about that. Because certainly I'm not the final word on anything. And some of the cavers thought I was too pro Park Service, and the Park Service accused me of being too pro caver. You'll let those suckers do anything. Well, not anything. I've never slept with one of them. But anyway, it was interesting. And Dale, I mean, we're good friends. We were out just last week together with our cameras. And he was very nice to me because I couldn't hardly walk. But anyway, he had a completely different approach to doing that job than I did. And I'm sure I did different than Charlie Peterson did. And that's okay, because each of us brought what we thought was appropriate. I don't think he quite opened up his home to people like Diana and I did, but we did. And I'm not sorry for any of that. One of the greatest times was one night I come in the front door, and the front room was full of cavers, and standing over there was Roger Brucker giving a presentation on mammoth, and sitting over there was Sheck Exley, who had been talking about diving, and there was Donald Davis. I mean, what a group. And I really love that, because I admire all those people. I deeply admire cavers, and I've never had a problem with them. Well, I won't say that. There's been one or two that I would not mind using it as a speed bump, but I'm not going to get into that.
You have a question in the chat too.
Oh.
Roger Osario. How can we best inspire the next generation of cavers?
That's a good question. I know what inspired me, and he's probably not going to like this answer, but show them pretty things. That's how Bat Conservation International, that's how PETA, I mean, PETA doesn't have pictures of scorpions and centipedes and dung beetles. They have cute little creatures. So show them the pretty things, and that makes the first shot free. And then go on from there. I mean, Donald Davis once said to me, and I don't subscribe to this. I was talking about Caverns of Sonora and how magnificent it was. I loved it. And Diana and I got to go one time with Jack Birch into the helictite room in Sonora. And for those of you who don't know that cave, that's what it's famous for, is helictites, especially bladed helictites. And so here's a cave that has helictites everywhere, and yet there's a room that they have designated the helictite room, which is just, there were speleothems in there that would vibrate when you talked. They were so delicate and sensitive. Anyway, Donald said that he had rather walk through 3 feet of virgin cave than to go into the most beautiful commercial cave in the world. And that's okay. But I wrestled around with that, and I would not trade any experience I've had for the things that I've got to see in Sonora, like a Kango cave in South Africa. We got in there and somebody pointed up to the ceiling and said to me, "Look at that. It looks like Sonora." So I've told people that Sonora and like Carlsbad are like Coca-Cola. They set a standard to which all else is compared. And that's another thing about the Park Service. I was grateful that I got to visit other countries and represent the U.S. National Park Service. Although I never liked that uniform, or especially that hat. And when he retired, a guy who had been chief ranger out there and was a good friend of mine at Carlsbad, he gave me an award for the least used uniform award. And I was proud of that because I just didn't like to wear that uniform. I thought it was like a barrier between me and the cavers, that uniform, because I'm not. One time I was in Idaho going into this crystal cave, magnificent cave, beautiful cave, a pit. And I didn't know what we were waiting on. I was standing around, and finally I said to somebody, what are we waiting on? Why don't we go in the cave? And he said, well, we're waiting on this big shot from the National Park Service to show up. I said, oh, I didn't know there was going to be another Park Service person here. And I said, who is it? And he said my name. And I said, well, you're going to wait a hell of a long time for that guy, because he's no big shot. And somebody else said about being in charge of caves. I've never been in charge of anything, except what I make for breakfast. Any other questions? Oh, George.
Hey, Ron.
You
After you left, retired from the Park Service, of course, Dale followed you in your position.
That's
and
right.
Then when Dale retired, Joel Despain filled that position, and Joel has just retired, and Nickery is trying to fill that position right now. What do you think? What do you see is our major challenges still in the Park Service that you would like to see addressed, be it at a specific park or Park Service wide with caves and karst?
The legitimacy of caves. Anytime we went to a meeting, I was always pushed out to the side because it seemed to be more important to talk about water, seemed to be more important to talk about fossils. It seemed to be more important to talk about soils. And I tried to explain, and many times I never got the chance, that caves are just as important and they encompass all of those things. And it was something that I hammered and hammered and hammered on. And George, I think that's a big challenge, is although it's the International Year of Caves and Karst, I was surprised. I'm trying to get a shed built, and a lady here from the county, I use the word karst for some reason, I don't know, and she said, I know what that means. Well, I bet you can't find 10 other people who would say, I know what that means. So that was as a big challenge, is the legitimacy of the caves and why they need protection. And I simplified by talking about them being the plumbing of the earth, and groundwater, and your grandkids will get killed if you pollute that stream. And so that's one big challenge, is making sure that people understand what they are, because all they have in their minds are pretty lights and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in your flashlight and that kind of thing. And it would take a Herculean effort to push it away from that kind of attitude about caves. I had one time someone I was talking to who was very religious. She was in my backyard at the cave, was standing on top of one of the world's great caves. And she asked me how caves are formed. And I told her things. I talked about dissolution and all this and that. I tried to do a really good background about them. And after I was finished, she patted my hand and said, bless your heart, you really believe all that, don't you? I said, what? I said, no, these are things that you can measure. The dissolution of rock, it's measurable. You can. She said, well, bless your little heart, and walked away. And I went, God almighty, now what? And of course, well, no, I promise I won't get political here, but things haven't improved a hell of a lot with some people since then. Is that okay, George?
I think that's an excellent response. It's one of the reasons we're organizing the International Year, is to make some headway toward that legitimacy. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yep. But you still need to go get a haircut.
We were talking about that earlier. The guidance for COVID is wear masks and stay 6 feet away. So until I meet a barber with 6 foot long arms, my hair's staying, as it is.
Yeah.
Ron, my daughter has a question.
Okay. Hi, daughter.
The computer roast.
What's your favorite cave?
Oh, wow. My favorite cave is a cave in Texas, down by Rock Springs, Texas. And it is what they call in Texas a jug cave, because it's big at the bottom and small at the top. And it's called the Devil's Sinkhole. And I think it's one of the most wonderful places I've ever been. And it's not one that's all full of real pretty things or real extensive, because it is not extensive. But that's my favorite place to go in caves. Although now it's really difficult because it's a Texas state park. And when I was going frequently, it was not. Cavers could just go there. Well, after you signed a waiver for Mr. Whitworth. Does that answer your question?
You want to say anything else?
Was there bats?
Yes, lots of bats, like Carlsbad. And an exciting thing about those bats is when they would start their flight out, there were owls and hawks that were around. And the biggest difference between owls getting some bats to eat for dinner and hawks is the owls would just, because Mexican free-tailed bats come out in a big column, real dense. And so all the owls had to do was just stick out their talons and boom, go into a mass and have one. But the hawks would chase them down, an individual bat. And the owls were not into that. They thought, well, there's a whole bunch of them. Let's just grab one. So yes, there are lots of bats there. It's quite a place.
Thank you.
You're welcome, hon. Thanks for asking. It's also a place that you should not sleep on the ground without a sleeping bag, because you end up with ticks and kissing bugs all over you. You need to be in a sleeping bag or in a tent.
We have a DVD about that cave with the old cowboys that made a movie down there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for signing this book for Rose, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
We love it. Right, Rose?
Good, good.
I'm sure people could ask questions all night long. Were there any other questions that people were just dying to ask?
Yeah, I've been trying to ask one for quite a long time. while we got Ron on the hook here. But with all your years of experience, Ron, if you could change something in particular about the way we manage caves, what would that be?
I would make it mandatory that the managers of those caves become fully acquainted with the resource and what that. One time was in a meeting with landscape architects, and we were talking about infiltration into the cave. And this lady got very upset with me later and refused to ever be in a meeting with me again, because she said that I intimidated her with my maleness. I don't know what the hell that was supposed to mean. Anyway, I was trying to explain that antifreeze and oil and various other substances could leak down into the cave. And she said, and I was talking about sewage and everything, and she said, but the entrance is over there. It's nowhere near those things. And I said, as soon as you go in the cave, you make a U-turn and start down underneath those parking lots. I said, you know what I like about meetings is it's where we all get together and pool our collective ignorance. And that was not a good thing to say. And hey, I saw you on TV the other day.
Oh, really?
I love all those things now. My kids subscribe to them, and I just piggyback on them, all those, channels that they can get, and all the nature things that I can get. And there was one about the Crystal Cave down in.
Oh, right.
Oh, really good.
We're trying to get back down there.
I was
trying to get back down there.
I was saying, I know her. I know that person. There was nobody to listen. So
we're on hold until COVID is over.
Yeah,
so
I'm
supposed to be another expedition. We're waiting on it. So.
One of my grandsons wants us to have a family reunion with all the grandkids and great grandkids. And we said, well, yeah, we'd love it, but when? We don't know.
Yeah, maybe fall.
Yeah, maybe next year we're planning, really. Yeah.
That'll be fun. That'll be wonderful.
Good to see you, Penny. It's been a long time.
Great to see you, Ron. I was going to ask the poetry question, but Linda beat me to it.
Hey. Yeah, I don't know.
I have another question about the surface more. There was a recent online article in National Geographic about the risk to the caves from oil and gas in Carlsbad. And I don't know if you've been to Carlsbad recently, but it's a mess. And I think it's horrible. And I'm working on a lot of environmental legislation in Santa Fe to do something about that, but I don't know how much we can do. So I was just wondering what your feelings are about the risk to the caves from oil and gas.
Well, it's a tremendous risk. And I speak not as somebody who wants to take away people's ability to drive their cars. I was an oil field worker from 1962 to I went to work for the Park Service in 76, except for the time that I was a commercial diver. So I'm well acquainted with the oil field and I'm well acquainted with what they will do. And sure, I was working out there a long time ago, but I can say that the employees' attitudes have not changed. Whatever's the easiest way to do it, do it. And what I always tried to emphasize, and I didn't seem to get it through, that it's not just the cave that you can recognize, a series of sinks or an entrance, but it is in limestone especially, it's the jointing and the faults and the bedding planes. And that if something leaks, it just follows those same avenues down to the caves that the water did that created the caves. And that's also a very difficult concept for people to grasp because they don't understand how this works. And well, good luck, Linda. I fought against that the whole time I was at Carlsbad and about Lechuguilla. In fact, one time they wanted to get some asphalt redone on the parking lots. And Carlsbad used to have a tennis court. And they dumped all that fresh asphalt that was going to be put on the roads and other places right up slope from the back cave entrances and the shafts. And I went into the superintendent's office and I said, you need to get that stuff out of there. He said, what? And I explained to him and I said, at first rain, all that crap's just going to wash right down on top of the bats. And he said, get out of here. And I jumped up on his desk and I looked down. I said, how does it feel to have somebody looking down at you? And he said, get off my desk. So I jumped off his desk, walked out, and he said, one more time, you can't talk to me like that. I said, you pay me to talk to you like this. So people who ask me, how did I stay in the Park Service? I don't know. I just was never looking for a career. I just wanted to read my comics and be left alone. Love my family. So anyway, that's it. You're going to have I've been in some very tense meetings in oil and gas people. One guy even got so upset when I was talking one time in Albuquerque. He said, I thought this was all pro development. And I didn't have anything to say about that. I said, well, I'm pro-life, but not the way you think that means. So, well,
Okay, thank you.
I don't even know what time it is. I've probably taken you guys too long.
I'm just worried that we're keeping you too long because you've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes.
Dave, I'm retired. I have nothing, no plans for the future. Of course, I've never had anything. So I don't, it is past my bedtime. And I was watching on this thing, I was watching Star Trek Discovery, the second season. So that's all I'm going to do when we hang up is go back to watching that and see if they find Mr. Spock again as a younger guy.
Did anyone else have any pressing questions for Ron? We don't want to keep him too long, but this has been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome, Deb. I'm glad to see you. It's wonderful to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you, Ron, really a lot.
Ron,
Thanks, Ron.
Yep.
excellent talk.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
I'll
guys.
try to stay. I'll try to stay out of.
Howdy.
I'll try to stay out of range of that bending kit.
Do you also remember the bat defrosting kit that you gave me?
Oh yes, you never would use it.
No. I was clever enough to figure that out. All right.
Said you get
Ron,
this presentation because you're so fond of us, but don't forget that we're also incredibly fond of you and appreciative of all your great work for so many years.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
So
Yeah,
much.
us park guides literally tell stories of you every day. I probably tell 50 stories about you every day at the park, and I'm sure every other park guide does too. We
I'm
really,
sure there are better people to talk about than me. The people that are sitting all around here, in
well,
front
I
of you.
know lots of stories about many of these people too. So.
Uh-oh. We're in trouble now.
I hope you're writing down all those stories because you have some wonderful stories over the year.
Well, Jim Goodbar's really pushing me to do that too. Just
Yeah.
because I put little things on Facebook, little doodads about nothing in particular.
Where can we find that book that was mentioned that was labeled as poetry? Bats and
I don't know. Jim Goodbar may have some copies because I have one.
I've got some. I'll get one too.
Oh, there, hey, there, hi. God, I thought Zoom, I thought you'd see all these people around everywhere, but everybody just keeps popping up. Hi, Rich. Okay, are we closing this up?
yeah, we'll start moving on.
Thanks,
to the
Ron.
meeting. As mentioned, Ron, you're welcome to stay for the meeting if you want to, but no hard feelings whatsoever if you
Well,
decide to sign
Yeah,
off.
I need to trundle off.
All right.
That radiation treatment has kind of upset my waste disposal system. So,
Well, thank you so much. This was marvelous.
well, I
Thank
enjoy
you, Ron.
it. You're more than
you, and
welcome.
take
All
care.
of you.
Yeah.
I embrace every one of you. Thank you so much.
Virtual hug.
Yeah.
Stories.
You.
All right.
Thanks so
That's
much.
right.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye, Ron.
Bye-bye. Now, if I can figure out how to turn this off. Oh, you know what? One final thing about why I love cavers. I was, Diana worked for Sears, and she was one of their A players, so-called. And they had a big fancy dinner and award thing. And she was one of the awardees, and she kept getting more and more departments to run. And the store manager asked me, because I bought my first computer from Sears. I didn't know anything about them then. And he asked me what did I do with my new computer? And I said, oh man, it's cool. I said, you know what? There's a website that has all the lyrics to all the songs of the Grateful Dead. And he said, oh, well, I look at my stocks on it. And okay, whatever you think. And sometimes Jim and I could get a little bit out of control. So after that big fancy meeting, we were coming home, and I asked her if I embarrassed her. And she said, what? I said, well, I haven't completely grown up. Do I embarrass you sometime? And she said, those people have no idea of the kind of life that we've led and the people that we know. So she said, no, you don't embarrass me. They should be embarrassed to try to talk to you. So anyway, that made my life complete when she said that. And all of you, you all need to grow up. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ron. It's been wonderful. You're too humble.
All right. That's an oil company.
Bye-bye, Ron. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Bye, Ron.
Bye-bye.
All right. I know that we have a lot of folks with the Southwest region Grotto on. So since we're moving on to the Pecos Valley Grotto meeting section, you're of course welcome to stay on, but no hard feelings if you sign off. I'll start sharing my screen here.
Before we start, Dave, is Rose there?
Rose, come here. Yeah, she was just about to go to bed. Come here, Rose. Someone wanted to say something to you, I think. Oh, what's happening?
This is my pallid bat. Oops. This is Rosie.
Rose, do you see the bat? Did you hear
I
what
got to get her in focus. There she is.
the bat's name is Rosie?
The bat's name is Rosie.
Did you hear that? Did you hear what kind of a bat it is? Do you know what? It's a pallid bat. You know what pallid bats like to eat? They can eat scorpions.
And centipedes.
Why Rosie? Deb, why Rosie?
Why the name?
Yeah.
We could never figure out a name for her. We, just Bob and I discussed it, and she stinks. When she gets a little startled, she smells like a skunk. And so we decided a rose in any other name smells just as bad. So we named her Rosie.
Isn't that funny? That's such a cute bat. Isn't it? Say thank you for showing me.
Thank you for showing me.
Well, you've grown so much. I can't believe how big you are now.
Do you remember last time you saw her and she showed her one of her bats? Yeah, you do. We have a picture of you with one of the bats next to your face in the visitor center.
Yeah.
You remember that bat that you met in the visitor center? Surely you do. Once you see the picture, you'll remember.
Thanks for getting Ron to talk, Dave.
Oh,
that was excellent.
I was tickled to pieces. This is my last meeting as chairman. I didn't run again. We're doing elections tonight, and so I figured, what better way to wrap up my chairmanship?
That was an excellent idea.
Thank
you.
Wonderful. Thanks for thanking me. All right, I'll go back to share screen and pull up my little PowerPoint. Slideshow. Oop, that says it's not responding. Well, while we're waiting for my laptop to cooperate, hopefully you all can still hear me since it says not responding. Can you all still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Seems like it's going to start any second now. Oh, I've been promising this whole time to get rid of those darn sound effects, and I never did. So yeah, there's Mr. Kerbo, and there's the balloon contraption, and there's, you can see Michael Queen in there. I think Larry's in that picture too, right? So that was the balloon contraption for Spirit World, 1985. So caving news. It's the International Year of Caves in Karst. I know that lots of people are doing lots of things. If George wants to add on to that later, that would be welcomed. There is a new book that Roland Vineyard has put out. I'm very familiar with Roland Vineyard because some of you might know that I've done cave songs, the cave ballads for the NSS Cave Song Contest. And Roland has always been the host of that. But I'm sure Roland's done a lot more than I realized. But he wrote this book about a caver, and it's available on Speleo Books, and it involves crime, the FBI, and so it's a good one to check out. Here's a neat study that's being done. They found a conch shell in a cave, and they think it's like the oldest wind instrument ever to be found. So, because it looks intentionally chipped away and it makes musical tones. So that is an article that you're probably going to want to look into if you haven't looked into it already. Convention has potential dates. So note that the dates are subject to change, late June through early July, currently in Weed, California. For any youngins, there's a discount on the NSS membership. I want to throw this in there because the parks was closed today and it was closed on Monday from the snow that we had, and just nice seeing the cave entrance covered in snow. There's a grant for to find if COVID-19 could impact bats, and I'm sure many folks on the call tonight know more about this than I do. So feel free to talk about it in the other news section if you want to. Timpanogos Cave has recently been featured because, you know, they've been studying the pools in that cave for some time and distinctively noticed that with less people, there's less carbon dioxide in the pools. And so they're excited to find what's going to come of their research now that the cave's been closed for about a year. Does anyone have any other caving news that they want to share?
I guess I got one to say. Obviously the International Year of Caves and Karst has gotten started. I think there's plenty of people already contributing to that. One of the contributions that the Carlsbad Caverns Park is making is the Three Sources of Light podcast. Our first episode actually kicks off with the discussion about the International Year of Caves and Karst with our current cave cave technician who's on detail right now. And here pretty soon, we're going to get a couple of more episodes that are at least related to International Year of Caves and Karst, and hopefully getting those out to people. But anyways, first episode came out, and I'll put a link to that in the chat of this meeting. So thanks for listening.
Great, thank you. We've got right now about 130 national, international organizations partnering on the International Year. Lots of events that have been announced. If you go to the website, you'll see under the events tab, there's actually two options there in the drop-down box. One is for announced events and one is for event results, events that have already happened. So there's a lot of lectures and other things that you can watch at any time. The opening ceremonies went well. We've had close to 7,000 views of the hour-long opening and almost as many views of the 6.5-minute long video that's at the very end. I believe I previewed that for the Grotto at some point some time ago before we released it publicly. Lots of people really like that video. So we're always looking and encouraging more. The Park Service is a great partner. You won't see the Park Service though listed as a partner at the current time on the website. There's just some paperwork issues to get permission to list the MPS logo. So whether or not the MPS is listed as a partner or not, that's something for Park Service folks to figure out, and they're looking into that. But we are going to be listing, if not already up, a lot of MPS meetings. There's already weekly or almost weekly meetings that I've been on with the Park Service about the International Year. So a lot of great things are happening. Anything that supports outreach to the public, even to the educated public. Last night, I gave a talk to a bunch of my old professors from Penn State, educating the educated about caves and karst, and that's going to be loaded onto the website for the International Year. So any public education efforts, as Ron was saying, are good.
Thanks, George. Any other caving news anyone wants to share? Okay. We'll move on. I see the next slide is going to be, oh, does someone want to say something?
Just one more thing, so everyone knows. I posted to the Grotto page the what is it, the NSS YouTube feed. So and if you want to watch anything about NCRC cave rescue, looks like the first video that's up is introduction to NCRC regions. That's available on in a link on our Facebook page. So go check it out if you're bored or you want to check those topics out. All right, that's all I got.
Thanks,
I'll
Keith.
also add about the NSS convention. The organizers of the convention are trying to possibly postpone it to the date of the International Congress, which is scheduled for the end of July. The Congress organizers are going to make a decision at the end of March on whether or not they will postpone the Congress till next year or not. So I don't know if the NSS will wait that long before making a final decision, but it's something that they're looking into.
Thank you, George. All right, if there's no other caving news, then we'll move on to reports. We'll start with the treasurer report.
Can people understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I can kind of hear you now.
Okay, we have $2,371.98 in the treasury. We got a nice donation from Michael Moffett this week. I received the payment for the Grotto auction, and people have been paying dues.
All right. Wonderful, thank you. And then the secretary report. That's right, our new secretary has moved to North Dakota. Andy was our secretary, and Colin is the nomination for secretary. Colin, did you have anything that you wanted to say or no?
Well, the last meeting, Enmar Mirza gave the presentation about cave rescue and his experience caving. Of course, there are a lot of stuff with International Year of Caves and Karst we talked about. George Venny mentioned the opening ceremony that happened. And yeah, and of course, there were the nominations as well, the last meeting.
All right. Thank you very much, Colin. That'll bring us to trip reports. Does anyone have any trip reports that they would like to share? Oh, I skipped old business, new business. Yeah, let's do those first. Old business. Does anyone have any old business they'd like to address? Old business going once, old business going twice. Okay, then we'll move on to new business. Obviously, the annual elections will be part of the new business, but we'll do that for the last thing of new business. Does anyone want to bring up any new business? New business going once, new business going twice. Okay, then we will move on to the elections. Let's start with the treasurer. So far, Phyllis was nominated for treasurer. Does anyone want to make any other nominations? Going once, going twice. Okay, no new nominations. So if you'd like to vote for Phyllis, first of all, Phyllis, you still want to be running for treasurer again?
figured it was the easiest thing is to run for treasurer again.
As long as you're okay with it. Okay. So there's been no nominations. So if you would like to vote for Phyllis for treasurer, if you click on participants at the bottom, little screen pops up and you can see a green check says yes and a red X that says no. So if you want to vote for Phyllis for treasurer, go ahead and click the green yes. And if you want to nominate or vote for someone else, in the red X, but so far, of course, there's no red X's.
Come on, this is ridiculous.
Okay. I see 0 red X's and I see green checks. So Phyllis, you are the treasurer again for 2021. We will move on to secretary. Everyone can clear out your votes. There's a little icon there that says clear all. Good. And secretary, so far, Colin is nominated. Does anyone want to nominate anyone else? Going once, going twice. No new nominations. So if you'd like to vote for Colin for secretary, click the green check for yes. If you oppose, then check the red no.
Colin didn't vote for himself. Come on, Colin, vote for yourself.
All right, I see several green checks and I see no red no's. So Colin, you are the secretary for 2021.
I can't find that.
Vice President, thus far, Mr. Michael Moffett has been nominated for Vice President. Are there any other nominations for Vice President? Going once, going twice. Okay, no new nominations. So if you'd like Michael Moffett to be Vice President for 2021, check the green check for yes. If you oppose, then check the red for no. I'm glad to see that Gabe was able to reconnect just now. So Gabe, since you just got on, we're voting for Michael Moffett or not. There's been no new nominations for VP. So if you'd like to vote for Michael Moffett for VP, then pull up participants and check the green check for yes or the red check if you oppose.
The actions button.
Well, no red checks and there are green checks. So Michael Moffett, you are the Vice President for 2021. Congratulations. Okay, clearing. They're all cleared out now, and we'll move on to Chairman. Thus far, Mr. Gabe Montemayor has been nominated for Chairman, and so far there's been no other nominations. Are there any new nominations for Grotto Chairman? Going once, going twice. No new nominations for chairman. So if you'd like to vote for Gabe for chairman, check the green check for yes. If you oppose, check the red for no. Just for the record, Gabe had messaged me that he got kicked off a moment ago. There he's moving again. I see motion to the video. Thus far, I see Good number of green checks, and I see 0 red X's. Going once, going twice. I just got a message from Ron Kerbo. Yes, since there's no opposing and plenty for, Gabe, you are the chairman for the Grotto for 2021. Congratulations. I will hand over running the meetings to you beginning next month. Ron's message says, Dave, please pass on to everyone my appreciation for being willing to hang around and put up with me for over an hour. Okay, so that concludes the elections for 2021. We have new officers chosen. I see several things in the chat there. Phyllis mentioned, Gabe, you need to be an NSS member. I'm sure that Gabe is an NSS member, probably has been since he was a baby. That will bring us.
It wasn't in the 2020 members manual.
He wasn't? Maybe
unless he doesn't live in New Mexico.
Oh, he has a different first name.
I'm registered in Texas.
His name is not Gabe.
That's true. Yeah.
That's
I have the number. It's like 69,000 something. I'll get it passed along to you here in a moment.
Okay, that's fine.
He doesn't like his first
I've got the others. I just need yours.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Then that will conclude the new business. And we'll move on to trip reports. I guess I'll just start with the one that was sent a picture to me, or a whole trip report actually. Mike, Mr. Manser, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to?
And so, yes, so this trip was into Hidden, the upper section on January 30th. And so it was kind of a special day because it was Todd Roberts' birthday. So Minori and I kind of cooked up a little scheme of bringing in some cupcakes and a candle. So that's what I kind of managed to get in safely with my backpack. And so you're seeing him holding his birthday cake there. So all COVID safe, of course, but we had a little celebration. So in 53 years of caving, that was my first time of having a birthday in a cave, a celebration. So, but anyway, it was quite productive. We made repairs to 14 different formations, including one that was 8 feet tall. And so we had 2 separate drips on this one stub coming out of the ceiling. So Todd's idea, instead of using solid stainless steel pins, to go with stainless steel hollow tubing, to hopefully that the water coming from those drips would pass through to the piece below it. So we will know when we go back there this Saturday to find out if it's working or not. But we also made some repairs to a ceiling section that had a small soda straw. And Colin was on that trip as well. So we managed to match up quite a few more formations and epoxy them together. So it was quite successful. Again, we had 14 formations we worked on, and including one 8 feet in the air. And that's it. The next trip will be on Saturday. If anybody's interested in participating, just let me know, because we'll probably have more in the future for sure.
Sorry, Mike, you said the next one is when?
This Saturday.
Oh, okay. Wow. How many spots do you have open?
I've got one spot open. If somebody wants to go, it's 4 of us. It's going to be Todd Minori, myself, and John Cochran. So if anybody else is interested, let me know.
What's the date on that next trip? This is Michael speaking, sorry.
That date's this Saturday, so it'd be the 13th. Oh, no, wait, excuse me. I'm looking at the 13th of the next one, but this Saturday would be the 20th, yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other trip reports?
I got a very brief one, but before I got sick and after I've been spending some time looking at karst features in the Seven River Hills, since I live in Artesia, it's not too far away from me, and found a pretty awesome sink that a surface feature on the side of one of the hills that didn't really lead to anything, but it's still, you know, nonetheless a feature. And so, you know, I spent a lot of time doing that. And if anyone's ever interested in doing something like that, you know, feel free to hit me up. I got 4-wheel drive, so I can get a lot of places if need be. So. That's all I got.
Well, I'll give an international trip report. I went to Texas, and so Karen and I went down to Big Bend National Park. Along the way, we just went to go camping and hiking. Along the way, though, noticed some, there are probably shelter caves off of one of the highways on the way down. But we were down in the Cottonwood campground, which is very close to Santa Elena Canyon, and spent quite a bit of time looking at that big cliff along the fault that that Santa Elena cuts through. And both on the Texas and the Mexican side, there are some holes there, and stared at them quite a bit with a set of binoculars. I've no doubt several of these things are just little pockets that don't do anything, but there were a couple that looked like they're probably honest to God caves. I won't guess at how far they'll go back, but I think it would be a great fun trip to get a permit from the park and hike up on top of that cliff with a rope with a spotter down below, telling you where to lower the rope and rappel on down and check out these things. So anyway, it was not necessarily a caving trip, but like Michael was just saying, spotting some things that might be of interest for the future.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd be interested in joining you if possible.
I didn't say I was going. I'm already overloaded on projects, but I'll be glad to give information and point people in the right direction.
Okay.
Although I'd love to do it, mind you.
All right. Any other trip reports? I think this was more than a month ago, but Melissa Rose and I may have even mentioned it last Grotto meeting, did a trip to Boyd Cave, a BLM cave, to do a trash cleanup. There's a lot of beer cans in that cave, which is a shame because it has a lot of Native American cultural ties to it. But I think that was more than a month ago and probably mentioned it in a previous meeting. So no other trip reports? Okay. Any trips in the future? Does anyone have any planned ones? We already got Mr. Mansers coming up for Saturday to Cottonwood. Anyone else have any trips planned?
It's hidden, Dave.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trip on Saturday to Hidden Cave.
Yeah, thanks.
For correcting me. Was that Phyllis speaking up as well? No? I heard someone else speaking up. No other trips planned in the future?
I don't have it planned yet, but there's a good chance I'll be going to Deep Cave again in April, pending me not going, but just something to think about.
Thank you, Gabe.
Ellen was so kind to reach out to me when I posted to the group, and we're gonna work on some surveying. I know I'd asked a few people questions about it, something I've wanted to do for some time. I even have a fancy, since you can't really find the distos anymore, I reached out to a guy in the UK, and it actually just shipped out last week, called the Shetland Attack Pony. So I'll be curious to see having that all integrated system. and going out with Ellen just to learn. So it's that should be coming up here pretty soon.
Michael, I thought attack ponies weren't made anymore.
Well, I reached out to the guy and he made some new ones, so it's got Bluetooth on it. So I'm gonna give it a go and see how it works. I'm a gadget gizmo type person, so it's shipping from the UK right now. So to my PO box, thankfully, no more electronics to my house.
That's cool. When you get it, I'd like to see it in action.
All right. Well, you only live like 2 minutes away.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. Did that wrap up trip report or future trips? Okay. Then I guess that concludes our meeting. Is there anything else anyone would like to add before we close things out? Next meeting is Thursday, March 18th, which is fun because today's February 18th. It's usually not the exact date away. Anything anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to add, Dave, I'd like to add that our Southwest Region Business Meeting will be on Saturday, the 20th of March at 7 o'clock as a Zoom. And the week before, I'll send out the Zoom information.
Thank you very much. So that's March 20th, 3:20. Anything else anyone wants to add?
Dave, I should add that end of March, beginning of April, we're going to do another round of radon deployments and collections in the backcountry caves. So if anybody fancies an excuse to go caving, just send me an email or drop me a note on Facebook.
Thank you, Aaron.
And Michael, I just put my my email address in the chat. If you can send me a note, I'm going to be traveling on the 18th, and so I will be able to set up a Zoom meeting, but I may not be able to stay for the whole thing. So this way, what we can do is just pre-set up that I connect you, make you the host, and then I can, if needed, I jump off. But then you'll be able to run the meeting as the host.
So it'll be Gabe. Gabe.
Oh, Gabe. Okay, sorry.
It's okay. Michael's the new vice president. Gabe's the new chairman.
He gets to do the technical stuff.
Michael's photo is right next to mine on Zoom, and so I feel more attached to him at the moment. Gabe is off to the side, so sorry, but whoever, I will, just to take care of last minute coordination in case there's any last minute problems. That way I know how to reach you, but it shouldn't be a problem.
All right, wonderful. Okay, then if there's nothing else anyone would like to add, then that will conclude our meeting. It's been an honor running and serving as an officer for the Grotto for the last couple years. Maybe I will again someday. Thank you all. And thank you all for attending tonight.
I've got something to add.
Thank you, Dave.
Ron Kerbo mentioned his book of poetic prose for poetry, Bat Wings and Spider Eyes. I do have copies of that, and if anybody is interested in a copy, get in touch with me. I can provide a copy for a $5 donation to the Grotto.
I'm definitely interested, Rich.
Yeah, I'd like one too.
Okay,
Get hold of you, Rich.
Just get in touch with me and I'll get one too. We'll figure out how.
Be careful.
Okay,
you
sounds
might
good.
get lots of people reaching out for that.
Yep.
All right, I do see two other chat things. Let me just make sure. Okay, that's just the email and Gabe and his comments. Oh, and then Kelly Holiday posted, can you post how to reach Rich? So Rich, how could they reach out to you?
Let me unmute myself again. Probably either by phone or by email would work.
Can you type that in, one of those into the You know how to type into the chat log?
See if I figure out how to do that. Let's see.
You should be able to, if you go down to the bottom, you'll see a chat
That
option.
message here. Yeah, let me do that. Oops. Went away.
While Rich is doing that, Aaron, what were those dates for the radon? Aaron?
Oh, there are a whole bunch of them. We go to all the backcountry caves, plus Spider, plus Slaughter, plus all throughout the cavern, Lower Cave and Hall, and Left-Hand Tunnel. And they are all on a 90-day cycle based on when we last deployed the previous one. So they start pretty much with the first, like the last couple of days of March, first couple of days of April, and then run for about 2 weeks.
Late March. All right, thanks. I'm kind of interested in that.
Cool.
Rich, I see that you were able to type your name and send it. Are you able to get your email in there or something?
I put my name and email. I don't know if it's sent or not. I'm not sure what to do to send it.
You just hit enter and it should send. I see your name was sent.
I hit enter, nothing apparently happened.
Well, you have my email address, Rich.
Yeah, I should, yes.
daveinthecave@usa.com. Why don't you just send me an email and then I can send it out to the Pecos Valley Grotto email serve.
Yeah, that'll work.
What was the rest of it?
Oh, I typed it into the chat. Do you see where I typed it in there? Dave in the Cave.
Oh, I see it now. At USA.com.
Yeah. All right. Then that will conclude our meeting. Thank you all for coming. It was a blast.
Good meeting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. See you all next month.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey,
Great
take
job.
care.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. Yeah.
You're a good
Thanks,
president.
Dave.
Good chairman.
Bye-bye.
Bye.